Welcome Ruth Hunt, Chief Executive Officer of Stonewall.
Thank you. Hello.
Tell me a little bit about Stonewall. For people who don't understand what Stonewall is, what is it?
So Stonewall is a charity in the United Kingdom. We are 30 years old this year, and we were set up in response to something called Section 28, which was a piece of legislation that prevented the promotion of homosexuality in schools. So we were set up very much as a campaigning and lobbying organisation, and that's what we've done. We work very hard to change the law, but also to change hearts and minds through all sorts of different programmes of work, interventions, campaigns and ways of working.
So in the last 2 decades, I would suggest, certainly in the last 2 decades, gender politics and identity politics have been right up there and open for debate, which I'm sure that you do welcome. But with that comes real challenges, doesn't it? To be a leader of an organisation which is constantly in the public eye and under scrutiny and attracts massive criticism. How do you lead an organisation like that?
I think that being a leader in a context like that requires a huge degree of humility, a capacity to bend with the voices and hear what's going on. But I think at Stonewall we've got a very clear sense of our purpose. And I think we're very lucky in that we're here to make the lives of lesbian, gay, bi and trans people better. And that requires lots of different interventions. But all the way during my time at Stonewall, I've been there for 14 years, so started as a little policy officer. There is nothing that hasn't been without debate. You know, whether it was the rights of gay men to adopt children, or the age of consent, or gay people in the military, or same-sex marriage, or civil partnership, everything has come with a degree of deeply held belief and diametrically opposed views. And I think Stonewall's role has always been to stand firm on what we know is right, stand firm on being on the right side of history, but with very gentle hands find ways to accommodate the differences. There are some, of course, that exist on the outskirts of that reasonableness, and you can't really do much about that. I think what's different in the last 5 years is those extreme ends have filtered into daily discourse via social media. So whereas I was very used to discussing Catholic adoption agencies and whether they should allow same-sex couples in one context that was often very personal, deeply kind of vitriolic, that on Twitter is a whole different ball game, really.
So we're in a university. How can you help our students navigate some of that? What were you like as a student? Were you a campaigning student?
Yes. So I was president of my college and then president of the student union. So I was definitely a campaigner, and I think that part of what I always learned was that negotiating and navigating change requires a lot of time, a lot of persistence, and a willingness to kind of move with the reeds, really, and kind of find opportunities and nudge people along. I think that what I'm very aware of is that a lot of the things that I experienced growing up, which I think the young people now would just call blatant discrimination, I think my generation learned to kind of go, okay, we accept that, but have you thought about it from a different angle? And I can understand why the generation ahead of me are angry and have had enough of actually trying to persuade people to be nice to them and see their way through them. But what I've also learned is anger doesn't achieve change. So anger is incredibly important, and it's important that we acknowledge how things make us feel, but tactically, it doesn't change much. So it's about that balance between finding the strategy and the tactics to achieve change.
That's quite difficult, if I may say so, if you're a young person, and we do know that many students have vulnerabilities. We're a Stonewall Diversity Champion, which is great. We've also got a lot of support and a lot of things that go on to support our young people with mental health. Social media doesn't do anything to help that, really. Have you got any advice for young people on how to really cope with social media?
Well, I think social media should be taken in small doses in a time-limited way, and I think that it is a medium for communication and connecting. I mean, certainly when I was 17, 18, I came out when I was 13 in Cardiff in 1993, where there was no network whatsoever, and to be able to go on social media and find that a group of people like me would have been very helpful. But it's about knowing when to put the phone down and knowing when to draw a line around things. I think that we also have to work very hard in Stonewall to know what is truly reflective of a public mood and what is reflective of a small minority of people. So it is a platform and a vehicle and should be used carefully in the way that anything is used. And I think that we've all become a bit too comfortable with it being an extension of our social lives that's not real.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the two extremes, the two sides of the argument being much more challenging at this moment. What other challenges is Stonewall having? What do you think are the challenges in the next decade for Stonewall?
Well, in the next decade, sport is a massive frontier that we've made very little progress in. We see no openly gay players in male Premier League football, for example. There's a great cricketer today who challenged the use of gay as a pejorative. And that was a real moment, and that's the kind of thing that's been going on in schools for ages. So sport feels very new in terms of some of this work going on. International work is a real challenge for us. Of course, a lot of the countries internationally have our laws, our colonial laws, and we have a duty to try and dismantle some of those and support. But I think we're also aware that as a world, we are in quite a dark place, and the other and people who are different are experiencing more hostility than before. And it's sometimes assumed that diversity and inclusion is a linear journey, and it's not. It goes backwards and forwards. And Stonewall, I think we're aware that we're in a slight back phase at the moment. So lots to do.
Ruth Hunt, thank you very much.
Thank you.